All right, we are here for our wonderful podcast, Spread Infinite Hope. And I couldn't be more excited to speak with my guest tonight. Penny is an incredible human being with a very broad background. We're going to cover all that in the conversation, so I'm not going to take a lot of time now. But I just want, Penny, you're going to cover it. You'll see. But I just want to welcome you and thank you so much. She's a very busy lady. I know you are, you've carved time out for us. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It's good to be here. Hello to everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. So let's talk.
Let's talk. Well, I like to start at the very beginning because I do feel the roots or the seeds of what we become, are there somewhere in our early days. So can you take us into the Wayback Machine to where you arrived, when you arrived, and then we'll go from there.
I arrived in Michigan and it was in 1948. So beginning of 1948. And I am still in Michigan, even though I have lived other places. I have returned back to my roots, so to speak. And there was really nothing special about my childhood. The things that I could say about my childhood is that we lived according to the calendar of the Mother Nature because we grew our own food. We built our own house. We fixed our own car. We only had one car. Um, I still have a huge family. I think there are about 500 of us now, first, third, and fourth, and I think a few fifth, what do you call it, fifth degree cousins or fifth level. Um, so there's a lot of us, and we stay in touch. And it was just such a quiet childhood. It was very stable. I was really lucky because my parents were they were not educated, higher education, nothing like that. But they were very much in love with each other. They loved us, and that was obvious. And we lived in a little tiny house where we were pretty crowded. So there was 8 of us in the main family, and then sometimes as many as 17 of us when we had extra people staying. Um, and that's how I grew up. It was very, it was, I think of myself as sort of a wild thing back then, mostly because I didn't like shoes and I could never get my hair to lay down. And I didn't want to be inside and I didn't want anybody else complaining about, you know, about how wild I was. And really, I was just enjoying life. So
Did you stand out in the family as the wild one, or was that just your idea?
that's just my idea. I was very good in my estimation. So um, I followed the rules. I was a straight A student. I was very introverted, but the wild side of me was the side that was all over the place with my mind, my thinking. We didn't have any books. We didn't have any paper. We were too poor for pencils, or Scotch tape was an absolute utter luxury. And at Christmas time, we had to get creative. And so, we would get some paper, newspaper or whatever, and pin it with straight pins, pin it to the package, and it would hold together. And in the morning, somebody would hold the pin cushion while everybody unwrapped.
Oh my goodness, what a picture.
Yeah. The only thing that stood out, and as I look back, is that we had to go to bed every night for my entire life while I lived at home at 8 o'clock. And I hated that. And so I would lay in bed and wasn't tired yet. And so I didn't realize what I was doing, but I would expand my consciousness out of the body. And then all of a sudden it would all go, whoop, and I would end up back in the body. And I would do that over and over and over and over until I fell asleep. I noted certain times that I became extremely heavy to the point that I couldn't move. Even though my mind was all over the place, I also noted that I was able to dream and keep one ear out for what was happening in the family and still continue the dream. So there were some unusual things that I was doing as a young thing that later on scared the bejabbers out of me because I thought there was something wrong with me. But
Even
eventually,
later on, you thought something was wrong with you, or at the
for
time?
Kundalini, when I couldn't stay in the body and I couldn't stay in one place in time, yeah,
So
that's it. Yeah.
this is why I ask about young life, because you had started practicing, you know, when your parents sent you to bed at 8 o'clock. So just out of curiosity, what was the birth order? Were you first or
First. Yeah. I was first. And my sister was exactly 1 year behind me. And then there was a gap of about 4.5, 5 years. And there were two more. There would have been another child in there, but my mother had a miscarriage. And then she had the next two after that miscarriage. And then there was another miscarriage and she had two more. So there would have been 10 of us all together. But
And were you in I assume, a rural area?
yeah,
Small
yeah, we
town?
lived out in the boonies of town, and but we had a library, and I had a bicycle.
Oh. And was the family there for generations? Was this a kind of town where your family had originally gathered, pioneer
N-
days, that kind of thing?
n- Not really. My family was really from St. Clair. My mother's family, my father's family was from Richmond, um, but they were both immigrant kind of families. Um, I think my great grandfather, my grandpa's father, was a sailor who brought the family to first Canada and then Michigan.
Got it.
They were specialists they were in love with motors and engines, plane engines, boat engines, car engines, and they were very involved in high performance engines. Um, and so we did go to a few things that I was totally bored out of my mind with when I was a little kid. But my mother's family was all farmers and ranchers, and my father had had grown up, even though they were heavily focused on engines and motors and engineering. They had also grown their own food, and I guess I have to say that they kind of fell apart when my grandmother, my father's mother, died right before I was born, a couple months before. So yeah, so there were one, two. My father was the third generation here. My mother was, I think, same thing here.
Very interesting. So let's fast forward a little bit
Okay.
and take you into junior high, high school, and
Oh, let's. I want to go there.
well, I know, right? Not that fun. But what I'm asking about is where you started to place that magnificent mind of yours. What started to attract you in terms of
Um,
subjects, etc.?
Nothing. Nobody ever, ever, ever asked me, "What are you going to be when you grow up? Where you go?" I went to a little tiny Catholic school. It was all about rules and religion, and I came I came to a point, I think, where I recognized that there weren't very many choices for women back in those days. Um, so there was nothing in junior high or even high school that there was no point. Even my parents never, ever asked me or talked about, what are you going to do when you graduate? Not one word, not one question.
Oh
And
my
I think
goodness.
some of the, there was a couple things that happened in the ninth grade. Um, I could sing, and so I was training as an opera singer.
Huh?
And so the nun who was our choral teacher, our music teacher, decided we were going to have a play where the school was going to put on a play, and she wanted me to be in the play, and I was just, as an introvert, was like, oh, I kind of froze on stage the first night, but um, we had somebody in the wings, you should fly. And so I got through it. And then the next year we had a musical. We did a musical. And it was just, it was amazing. And then, and so every year we had a musical, and I was typically the lead singer or the star of that musical. And I loved that. And I didn't stop. I think the last musical that I did was Guys and Dolls, and I already had 4 kids at that point. So, yeah, God's a bunch of them.
So you found theater. That's pretty cool, unexpected.
Yeah, it was in many ways. I thought it was really great fun. Um, it was a lot of work. It was when you have 4 children, um, you don't go into a play with the idea that you'll get around to memorizing your lines when you feel like it. So it was a lot, but I enjoyed it. And um, and so that, my high school years were really, I was intent on learning as much as I could learn. I took every single class from every single teacher at the school that I started at, and ran out of classes by the time I was in the 11th grade. So my 12th grade year, I went to 2 schools. I picked up 2 or 3 classes in over at the public high school. So it
And
was
then where did you go from there?
from there I got married. I got out of high school in June. I got pregnant, I got married, and I had a baby by the time, all in that year that I was 18. And it was a rough, that's not advisable. It is not. And so I was married. I had 4 children in 6 years and got a divorce in the 7th year. So then I was on welfare for a while, and I decided against everybody's. I said, I'm going to go on welfare, and I'm going to put my kids in daycare, and I'm going to follow my dream. I had wanted to go to college, and I had no idea how to go about doing that. But everybody said, "Oh, no, don't go on welfare. You'll never get off of it." And I was like, look, that's what it's for. It's for people like me. It's for women who, need some help. And so I signed up for classes. Um, and it was just, for me, it was a dream come true. It was a time of flowering. And one of my professors said to me one time, well, because I had declared no major. And the professor said, well, what's your major? And I said, well, I declared no major. Why? I couldn't decide. And he said, you have too many gifts. You're going to have a hard time. Just pick one and then move from one to the next to the next. And that's what I ended up doing. So, yeah, I loved college, but I was just trying to raise 4 children on welfare on my own with a car that had a muffler that fell off every damn week. And I was taking 20 credit hours at a time, trying to squeeze, 4 years of college into the 2 years of free babysitting and college help that I could get. And I almost did it. I almost made it. So
That is remarkable. Just remarkable.
it wasn't easy.
No. I mean, it's astounding to me that you even were able to get through one semester.
Oh,
Honestly, you know,
oh,
the
oh,
focus that it takes and the focus that children take. I mean,
oh my God. Yeah. Um, yeah. There's some things that I could say that are just like, okay, we're going to turn around and go back home. Your son throws up down the back of your neck, hanging over the seat on the way to school. It's like, okay. Things that were so challenging, and yet I was I was kind of like, this is wonderful. I thought it was wonderful that I was getting to go to school. All the stuff we had access to, the learning, the view of the world, it was so rewarding.
and you
Oh
were
my,
finally probably meeting intellects that were closer to where you were.
no, I was old.
Oh,
I
I
was
mean, I don't mean the students, I mean the teachers, the professors.
Oh, yeah. There were some that were just really very encouraging. And and I started out, I wanted to be in medicine, and somewhere along the line I realized, no, it's too hard to this is hard. This
Mhm.
is hard work. And there's no way I'm gonna get through 4 years of undergraduate and then 4 years of medical school and then 3 years of, residency and all that. So I switched to engineering, and then even while I was in engineering, I was taking a whole bunch of classes in the College of Fine Arts, and that was really where I discovered that I loved writing. And even though I loved it, I still ignored it, although I got A's in the class. So,
Well, now it's interesting that you chose engineering. I know I read that in your bio because you had this engineering family background.
yeah, we had always fixed everything, built everything. So I had a basic concept of how to build a house, how to fix a car, how to deal with different kinds of equipment. It wasn't fancy or anything like that, but it was basic. And I thought, well, this is something interesting and it makes money. So I'm gonna go for it. And money is not the answer, let me tell you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interest. So you did you end up graduating with fine arts or did you graduate? What?
No, I got interrupted because my benefits quit after 2 years. I managed to squeeze like another 6 months out of the state of Michigan. And then I had to stop. And I stopped when I had two classes left. Two, I needed like 6 credits
Oh,
to graduate. And I thought, okay, fine. I'm going to go get a job. And so I went into engineering and or went looking for an engineering job, and I was hired immediately at Chrysler. And I loved that job. And I had wonderful people. And I think I was encouraged because the very first day that I was on the job, there was a little tiny, short, older fella named Wally. And there was some sort of problem that I can't remember what the problem was, but I said to him, well, what do you do in this kind of a situation? He goes over to his desk and he gets out a safety pin and he says, this is how we're going to fix that. And I was like, well, heck, I've been changing diapers for however many years. Cool. So it was really one of those moments that was all of my concerns about being out of place just kind of fell away. I
mhm,
knew at that point that it was what I had thought it was. It's common sense. That's what
mhm,
engineering is. If you know the principles and you have some common sense,
yeah.
then you can figure out most things. And it was a lot of design work. So all that work in the College of Fine Arts, that was very handy. And I had started my own business when I think it was 9, um, sewing.
Ah,
as a seamstress. I continued that all the way through my life. And there was nothing that I couldn't sew or put together. And so all of that really kind of, this is how you put things together. Um, and that it all kind of came together just right. The problem that I had was that um, well, there were actually a couple problems, but I think the biggest thing that of note would be that I was in a place where, for the first time, I really had time to get to know some people, and I fell in love, and that triggered Kundalini, and that blew everything right out of the water. So once that happened, I couldn't even function. People,
okay. So I was going to ask you what had happened to
yeah,
that expanding child in the bed, if it had sort of dissipated because you had
yeah.
so many other things on your plate. And then it sounds like it came back with with not a vengeance, but as
No,
a,
with a vengeance.
can you talk us through that a little bit? Because I think people really like to hear these turning the corner stories. What happened to, make you all of a sudden go from a basically normal life to a paranormal
Mm.
life?
Yeah. Um, I think, well, the first thing, which I've already said, is that I did fall in love. And that, what happens when you really love, not the kind of romantic illusion that most of us have at 20, which was what fueled my first marriage. Okay. That and the fact that I was pregnant I was like, oh, and everybody said to me, oh, wow, your life is over. My attitude was, no, it's not. I'm not done. and um, so I had this sort of a Molly Brown, unsinkable Molly Brown attitude toward, I have to do some things to show that, that I'm pretty normal. and, then I fell in love, really fell in love. And when it's real love, it's unconditional. It doesn't matter what the person says, what they do, what they don't do, don't say, what they think, how they look, how they feel, how they behave. None of that makes any difference. Something wakes up inside the individual, and that is unconditional love. And once I got into that, um, there was just a whole series. I can see it now in retrospect, but a whole series of little things, little signs that I was allowing more and more feeling to move through my system. Feeling is primary, and it's one step away from the full Kundalini thing. And so, we got to this point where I was just head over heels. Um, and I just, that whole thing triggered. It was really the first Kundalini thing happened in, I think, October of 1978. And I was still involved in plays, theater, and I was involved in making scenery because I had some design skills and a lot of sewing skills. And so there was just this moment of being with this man that I was just madly in love with. And we were looking at each other with that look that that just can't, where you're looking into somebody else's soul. And there was this awareness that that you can't deny.
Yeah.
And then, you get into the lovemaking part of it. Now you get really pretty intimate. But in that lovemaking, I would lose track of the body, and I would expand just like I did when I was a little girl. Way out and become this gigantic I don't know, circle or sphere of this intense awareness of feeling moving through. And that's still, I didn't put two and two together yet.
Uh-huh.
So that's, in the last quarter of 1978. But in February of 1979, um, again, get into bed, going to make love, don't even hardly get started. And I hear this roaring sound that sounded like a million jet engines. And then there was this shaking sound or the shaking. And I thought, oh, we're having an earthquake. Oh, no. And there was this feeling that shot up through the center of me. And it moved about the speed of a freight train. It wasn't moseying along. It was just boom. And when that hit my brain, actually, as it moved up, there was one orgasm after the next with each nerve plexus that it hit in the spine. And that, so there were like 6 or 7 orgasms, and the last one was in the brain. And poof, I was no longer here at that point. I was in another state of consciousness, which is, they call it the I am. It's the void, the I am, the Godhead, whatever term. There's no real good term for describing that. And you don't exist when you're in that state, the individual. You don't have any awareness of yourself as an individual. You become part of the all, and you're part of the I am. And that rewires you from the inside out, top to bottom. And when I came out of that, that was around Valentine's Day of 1979. And when I came out of that, it was like, whoa, what was that? What happened there? And then about two or 3 weeks later, the same thing happened again. And then about a week or two after that happened again. And I thought, wow, what's happening to my sex life? It's really great. Then it started to happen in the middle of driving, or in the middle of doing dishes or vacuuming, or, whatever I was doing. The rumbling would start and the shaking. And then, boom, the orgasm. And you can't be driving a car and not know where you're, not know what you're doing. And you can't really be doing dishes either. And so it became very problematic.
Yeah.
From February for the next 2 years,
Oh,
that was a big problem. So, and I was just about, I'm going to say after the second or third experience, I was then in and out of the body. I was wide awake 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was a psychic beyond all you don't want to know, things you don't want to know about other people, situations. You're seeing the future. You're seeing all kinds of things, actually. And it was really a rough period for 3 years. It was, it took me about 3 years to learn to shut it down enough to have a moment of, okay, I think I can do this. But, I ended up leaving Chrysler, hiding in my home. I eventually lost the home. I couldn't work. I lost the man, everything, lost everything. So it
I
was
was going to ask if he understood or could.
no. So all of, here's where unconditional love sometimes doesn't quite pay off. All those things that I overlooked because I was, somehow he triggered awake the fountain of love. There's a fountain of love within each one of us. That came on, darn thing would not shut off. I couldn't stop loving him no matter what. And I wrote about that in, I think, The Evolving Human, my first book. And I wrote about it a little bit more in Robes, a book of coming changes. But it was a long time. It was 3 years with no sleep. And you become pretty haggard. You get tired of the constant consciousness. Um, but I was by that point, the little men in brown robes were visiting. They were kind of like a lifeline. So lots and lots of things that were happening. Um, it was kind of like drinking from a fire hose at that time. All the change, big changes in my worldview, nature, and understanding things that I could see in my own body, things that I could hear. Um, you stick your foot in your mouth when you think somebody told you something because you knew it and they didn't tell you. And it's like, oh, I thought you told me that. Whoops. Oh, I'm sorry. So, yeah, so that's how that whole thing started. That's how Kundalini started.
That must have been absolutely terrifying.
It was. It was. I had my best friends were psychologists and nurses and psychiatrists and social workers, and they were like, what's going on with you? And I would tell them, and they would say, oh, have you seen a doctor? And the doctors, um, I did the I had a couple of friends and they didn't get it, and I thought they have no idea what how can I say what I went through or what happened. And I was so embarrassed about the fact that it all happened while making love. I thought there was something wrong with my lovemaking. It's like, oh my gosh. So
And at
that
that
time,
time, we were just getting the first sort of normal waves of Eastern religion philosophy, to even know what a Kundalini awakening would look like, to even,
yeah,
we had no, we were just starting to talk about chakras and doing
yeah,
yoga,
never heard of those things.
no,
Never heard of Kundalini. So it was probably, let's see, 2 years before I heard the word Kundalini. As soon as I heard it, I thought, what is that word? What is that word? There was something in me that knew there was something about that. Um, and then I was still with the man that I was madly in love with. And he said, hey, I heard that they're going to have a class in psychic development over at Macomb County Community College. You should go. And I was flat broke and, and not able to manage anything. And I didn't take any action and didn't take any action. And finally, I think it was in June or August, somewhere in the summer, he handed me the money, the cash for the class and said, go sign up. That was his only contribution to what I was going through, because I would rattle on about what I was seeing or knowing. And he was a drinker and he wasn't paying attention. He didn't care. And so it was like, okay, so I went, and it was a lifeline. And I think I had 2 or 3 classes with that group, and then the teacher moved away and I was so distraught. I thought, oh my gosh, I need some people to talk with about this. And so I put an ad in the paper to teach myself, the idea of being that I just wanted to draw some people to my house so that we could talk about this whole thing called psychic development. And and I thought, well, I should probably put something together so that, so that looks and sounds like a real class. And so I did some basic things, and people signed up. I was astounded. And so they, at the end, it was a 6-week class, like one evening a week for 3 or 4 hours, 2 or 3 hours, I think. And at the end of the 6 weeks, people said, oh no, we're not quitting. And I said, oh, well, the class is over. They said, well, then make another class. And I was like, oh. And so I made another class. And then when that was over, they said, you got a third one? And I said, well, and by this time I had too many people to fit in my living room. So I went to Macomb County Community College and said, do you guys want a teacher of teaching psychic development? And they said, no, we don't need that right now, but we know that Lance Cruz adult education program would be interested. So I wrote to them, called them, signed up, and I was astounded. The class was too full. And so I started teaching. And I think it was at that point, that first week of teaching at Lance Cruz, that I came out of the classroom. It was just getting dark. And I'm carrying all this stuff and all this equipment, but I just felt like Snoopy, the dog, like, whoa, coming forwards forever. I loved it. I loved it. And so then I told my family, I'm going to be a teacher. And they were like, what? You're going to be you've been an engineer. Why would you do that? And I was like, I'm insulted. Yeah, I'm going to teach. What are you going to teach? You don't even have a degree in education. Then I was like, well, what do I say? I'm going to teach that. So I said, well, I'm going to teach people how to develop and use intuition. And they were like, oh yeah, sure. So I started teaching, and I've been doing it ever since. So that's
Wow, fascinating.
yeah.
And really, in the beginning, you were learning as you taught it, right? I mean, just, I love this is what it is. Okay, now I understand.
No, what it was, the magic was all the people asking questions. I could get answers to almost any questions because I had unlimited consciousness at that point. And so they would ask, and I would, take that question home with me and chew on it for a minute, and it'd be boom. That's what that is. And there was a whole language associated with it that I did not know about. So I was still learning the language and decided, after a few years, wow, we need to change this language. This comes from somewhere in the 1400s or somewhere. So I started shifting the language and being very specific. This term means this and not that. And people are sloppy. You know how we are with language.
Oh gosh, especially in this field.
I know. Oh my.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started teaching, and then, I had this realization that maybe I should write this down, because maybe what if somebody else is out there dealing with this kind of thing? So I wrote my first book, and then just kept right on writing. And as I research more, I write more. So then I've written a few books now, and I love writing. So what I discovered in the College of Fine Arts was not really a fluke. This is where, teaching and writing, I write to teach, and I teach in order to watch people blossom. So, so that's it in a nutshell.
Wow. Wow. What a journey. What a journey. And how did you take these intuitive powers that you quickly acquired? Did you give people sessions, or did that ever happen? Did you become a practitioner?
Yeah. Yeah. After when I started teaching in my living room, there were a couple people who said, "Can I make an appointment with you?" And I was like, "For what?" No clue, no background at all in metaphysics, readings. I never heard about, that kind of thing, or that, nothing. So, so they said, well, could I come over on, 4 o'clock on Thursday or whatever? Okay, yeah. come on, we'll have tea. So at the end of the conversation, they would say, well, can I pay you? And I would say, for what? And they said, well, don't you charge? And I said, for what? Well, for what you do. And for me, it was having a cup of tea and talking. That's oh. And I was at that point realizing that there's something that, why do people keep wanting to pay me for this? And so then the whole relationship that I had with my magical lover fell apart, and he left, and we lost the house. And I had put a lot of my money into that house, and now I was broke. So anyway, long story short, I ended up moving to Royal Oak, and I lived in the basement of a woman who said, you're going to be on the street. You might as well come and stay in my basement. So I did. But while I was in Royal Oak, and people had tracked me to Royal Oak, can I come and talk to you? And so the woman that lived upstairs, it was her house, she says, what are you doing that all these people are knocking on the door? Or traipsing down in the basement. And I think she thought I was running some sort of a male-female brothel or something. And anyway, somebody, I'm not sure who it was, said Royal Oak is having a town fair, and they're going to have this fair at the such and such auditorium, and they're looking for people like you. And I was like not certain what that meant. So I thought, I was really at that point thinking I need to make some money. And so I called them thinking maybe I could set up a booth with something. I didn't know what. And they said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I don't do anything. But people like to talk to me. And so the woman said, the woman I was talking to was like, oh, you mean you're doing readings? And I was like, oh, that's what it's called, readings. So I said, yeah. And she said, well, yeah, why don't you, quote, bring your crystal ball and set up and charge people for a few minutes of a reading. And I'm like, okay, so I borrow a card table, I borrow a crystal ball, I get a long skirt, I get a black blouse and a something else, and I go and set up, and I put a little sign up that says, free reading, 5-minute reading. I think it was $3. And so people lined up that night, and the thing came to an end, and they said, lady, you have to go. It's over. And come on back tomorrow. It was a 3-day thing. So I packed up all my stuff and I left, and I came back the next day, and there was a line of about, I'm going to say 70 people waiting for me to show up. And I thought, oh no. So I raised my price, thinking maybe I'll, discourage a few of them. And it didn't discourage anybody. And then the next day was a Sunday. It was the last day. And I got there, they were lined up, and at the close, they were lined up and out the door and down the block. And I was just, I think this is a message. So, and at that point, people, I didn't have any business cards. I didn't know anything about that sort of professionalism. But people had said, can I get your phone number? Can I call you? And so people started calling, and I was very busy from then on forward. And so it's really, that was how I started doing readings. And even though I've changed the way that, like right now I'm too busy to do one-on-one, but I have still tried to make some of what I do available to a broader group of people for as long as I can make it. And that is in order to introduce middle class people
Yes.
and
Yes.
ordinary people
Yes.
to this is what consciousness can do. This is, and you'll have maybe a little different set of gifts, but you'll have some gifts, develop those.
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, when you look back, and I'm sure that you scan your own life for its path and purpose, but when you see that eruption, that happened out of nowhere, basically,
Right.
how it utterly gave you a 180, turned you around, turned your life upside down.
Mhm.
And you look back on that now. Um,
Mm.
do you think that was necessary in a way? It needed to be that big,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah. I did not. And even still to this day, I'm just now, after all these years, I'm coming to a place where well, first of all, I left out part of the story. Okay. So when Kundalini happened way back in the beginning, 78, 79, after the main Kundalini, the explosive experiences that really tore up my whole old consciousness, I was aware from that point onward that I was not from here, that I was from another place in the cosmos, that in all of the preparation that I had gone through to come here and the reason for coming here and the just everything about that and my name and the people who were still working with me and were kind of watching over me um, all of that was very much I kept trying to get beyond that, like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And there came a point in, I think, the mid 1980s, that I finally said, okay, I'll do what I can do. I tried to back out of the deal. There's a lot of detail that I'm skipping over, but I knew that I was here as part of a team of about 60, 65, 68 people. That was one team. There were 4 teams here. Each team was focused on something a little different. My team was media and education and a little bit of medicine, and a little bit of political stuff. But that the task that we had was to go and to wake up as many people as possible before the planet had the planet does a cleanup every 12,000 years. We'll say it's a cleanup. Um, and, and there was also a team here to counter what is known as the deep state. And that deep state was a conglomerate of people from elsewhere, other humanoids from elsewhere, trying to take over the planet and using distorted and psychologically damaged, I guess I would say, humans on the planet to do a lot of the dirty work for them so that they did not get in trouble. And you can't really have an impact from outside. You have to get inside. And so these teams were kind of like SEAL Team 6 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Get in there and you do you start working. And so I had been told and shown what the work was by the little men in brown robes. And I just kind of glossed over that by saying, oh, it's about writing and teaching. But the implications of why I just left that out. And the task, the struggle that I was having was um I don't see any evidence that anything is happening that I could counter. And so for a long time, I just resisted. But after a while, once I finally said, okay, I'll do what I can do, and then I just started doing what was right in front of me. But I had already established a reputation as um, an Irishman, a stubborn, hard-headed Irishman that didn't take a hint very easily. So I tried to open up a little bit more, and I'm very much interested in, and have had a lot of science background, a lot. And I see a lot of things that are being said, and like even with Three-Eye Atlas, it's like, oh my God, okay. Um, they're making that out to be something that it's not. Um, and when you see what it is, and you know how that type of material from elsewhere in the universe behaves, then it's like, okay, you guys, that's enough. You're going to end up looking like idiots when the truth of what that is actually comes out. So,
I'm really glad to hear you say this because I've been very reticent. I've been sitting kind of on the sidelines. Okay, I I don't have any evidence that it is what everybody's saying it is, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
it's plasma. It's a plasma structure. And when you have plasma coming from an interstellar space,
Uh-huh.
um, the energies and the frequency sets that exist in other places create other types of materials with slightly different compositions, different tolerances, different heating thresholds, different outgassing thresholds. It's not they keep calling it a comet. It's not a comet. A comet is ice.
Uh-huh.
And so and plasma is intelligent. We are plasma beings.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm listening to all this stuff and thinking, they're setting up to use that in some way that's really ugly. I don't know if they're going to pretend that, oh, Three-Eye Atlas attacked us, and it was really our deep state idiots
Mhm.
that think they're going to get away with something like that.
I don't
Um,
think at this point, I think we're a little too schooled or a
I
little
hope
too
so.
wary. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, at
But
least.
do you feel that it does have a message or an influence, evolutionary speaking?
Yes. Yeah. Because when you introduce a new form of material into any system, doesn't matter what it is, it's going to have it's going to emanate its own frequency, its own kinds of frequencies. Every thought, every word that you and I or anybody else speaks changes the whole of creation.
Yeah.
So now you've got this thing the size of Manhattan Island coming through, and it is behaving intelligently. They're using all these science terms that we've moved past those terms 10 years ago. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Okay, but people don't know. And the message for us is this is a change maker. It's a message that the universe and you, my dear people, are plasmas. You are a collection of plasmas. And once we start investigating plasma, it's a game changer. And, after I spent 15 years with Dr. William Levengood studying plasma physics and astrophysics and crop circles and animal mutilations and healing, instant healing and energy and consciousness and plasma and all of that.
Mhm.
And what Three-Eye Atlas is, from my point of view, and this might be just me, it's the signal that says, okay, it's time for plasma physics to be understood, to be known to, because that is a game changer and that will just pull the rug out from under the old world. And I really shouldn't say it that way. It will really make the new world, give it the base structure that is needed. So once you understand plasma and how it works, I mean, really understand it, wow. There,
Yeah.
there's then all of the physical stuff. It just you begin to see it is subject to the plasma, and that's a game changer. That's a big game changer. And a lot of scientists still, and this is what 2025. They still don't know anything about plasma. They hardly know that plasma science has been done, or is, or was being done, is being done. And so I'm really excited about the message. And when that thing started, glowing blue from within,
Yeah.
and they are like, oh, it's got to be something constructed. It's an alien ship. It's coming, blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Um, it's made of something that is really responding to the frequencies that we have in our solar system. We are a unique system.
Yeah.
And physical matter is less than 1/10 of 1% of the entire cosmos. So to think that we know what's happening out there when we haven't even acknowledged plasma, and that we're trying to make the physical rules that we have in our little tiny world here apply.
Yeah.
It's not gonna, isn't gonna fit. It's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It's really fascinating, and I think the timing of it is very interesting. I don't think it's random.
Yeah, it is.
Right. It's you said did you say trigger or it's a moment of acknowledgement to wake
Yeah,
up to
it's
this
it's a turning point.
turning point. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and the message is about plasma. So,
And the qualities of plasma, as opposed to more Newtonian physics and all that, the qualities of plasma are take us in a whole different direction in terms of just even understanding our own bodies, understanding any material aspects, right?
right. There's no way to equate the two. I mean, they do work together. But when you start to study plasma, and we're still finding new forms of plasma, you realize that there's a huge world of science out there that we have barely dipped our little toe into. And it is so interesting. The consciousness of plasma, the intelligence of it, the fact that it creates itself. It's amazing. It's
It
amazing.
creates itself out of what?
Nothing. It creates it when you have a plasma cloud. Let's say, well, let's just use the atmosphere. Atmosphere creates bits of plasma dust out of we can. Well, let me get technical for a moment, okay? So, um, so the space that you go into when you have a full-blown Kundalini experience is a space I call mind space, because it's absolutely empty. It's a black void. And yet there's this awareness there, this absolutely blissful awareness. And that awareness is I am. But it's not I, the individual. It's the basis for any individual that develops to hold that awareness, that I am awareness, and say, I am. And you can tack on, I am a human, I am a plant, I am a tree, I am a fish, a bird, whatever. And so that's your base stuff. I call source. But I think there's something beyond that. Okay, so mind space. And it's absolutely silent there. There's no movement, no motion, nothing. You don't exist. There's no past, no present, no future. You don't know that you ever existed. So when that starts to move, there's a phase change. And that phase change is to frequencies, all these vibrations. And the frequencies don't just do this, they do this. And they spiral down from a big opening down to a little bitty point. At that point, they produce a particle. It's either going to be a proton or an electron.
Oh,
And those protons and electrons interact, and so they exist in the atmosphere. So that atmosphere creates dust. It's called dust. It's the best word, dust.
for lack of a better word. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that dust is it organizes itself, produces tons and tons of this dust, clouds of it. And those clouds then become self-organizing, and they're nonlinear. And, they're also dissipated. And those are technical terms. Self-organizing means it has intelligence.
Right.
Okay. Nonlinear means can't be predicted.
Right.
It's unpredictable.
Mhm.
And dissipative means that you can introduce some new destructive interrupting energy, and the plasma is going to dissipate those energies into various directions where that destructive energy can be utilized in some constructive way.
Mhm.
And it builds new structures within its own main cloud structure. End up with something called a dusty complex plasma that has it's the basis. It can form itself into all sorts of patterns: flowers, birds, trees, people,
Yeah.
animals, whatever. And so those plasmas, they, we are plasmas. So there's now some argument happening that's in the science world that says, well, if the atmosphere or plasma's out in space where we think there used to be nothing, they thought, if they can create dusty complex plasmas out of nothing, and our atmosphere can do the same thing, is that a universal process? Is that something that happens everywhere? And the answer is yes. And if that is the case, then what exactly is existence?
Yeah.
If you make something out of nothing.
Right.
And so it calls into question the whole idea we have of God,
Yeah.
of the creation, of the Bible. There's still this immense and powerful force or love or presence of something that is, I'll say it's beyond, you can't really describe it, but it is intelligent. And that really is God. And so everybody's made of that stuff. So we need a new definition of God that says everything, every form is an image of God, not made in the image of, but an image of God in some form. And so, so we've been kind of like, we're going to have, little old ladies on our back that are saying, you're trying to take away our God. And that's really not the case. What we're trying to do is to get people to understand that when you move from mind space to consciousness energy, you move from awareness to consciousness. And then that awareness and that consciousness and the resulting intelligence are embedded in every single form, whether it's a stone, a flower, a
Yes.
human, or.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's finally a unifying theory. And
Yeah.
it puts to bed the Big Bang, too, right? And
Yeah, there was
one thing that I absolutely love about this, I didn't know about the spiral piece, because I take groups all over the world. I douse and see where I'm supposed to go every year. And
Okay.
so many times, no matter where I am, whether it's in Easter Island or Ireland or Scotland or South Africa,
Yep.
there's the spiral carved into the stone. And
Yep.
they say, well, we think it's this and we think it's that. This is
No.
what it is. This is what
Right.
it is.
Yeah. It is. And, I often say to people, the symbol of Kundalini is a snake. Why? Because it's when you get into vibration
Yep.
that you get the waves of consciousness, consciousness, depending on your frequency, that is what manages or controls or determines is a better way. That it determines what kind of consciousness you're going to have,
Right.
what frequency. So, yeah, the ancients knew, and we're catching up. So,
We're getting there.
right.
Honey, I have so many more questions for you. But I want to be mindful and let people have a chance to ask questions.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm going to take our spotlights off and, well, actually, no, I can leave them on. If you have a question for Penny, please put your little yellow hand up and I'll see you and then we'll go forward. But while we're waiting for people to put their hands up,
Okay.
I am curious. Okay, Leslie, I'll be right with you. I am curious if you ever connected with those other 65 people.
I'm not at liberty to say who.
Oh, sorry. That's okay. I just, it's
There's
hard to
actually
me.
about 200 and almost 300 of us here at 4 teams.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just hard to be a lone wolf. So I'm glad to hear something's happened.
I know who they are.
Good.
They don't know. I don't think they know who they are, but I know.
Oh.
And that is just one of the benefits of, Kundalini not only made it clear, but I have still some connection with my people from outside the planet. And ever so often I get a message or an indicator, that's one of you. And so I have everybody on my team. And there was another fellow that was a team leader. He and I were team leaders, and he died. And so now there's only me. And it does feel kind of like lonely from time to time, but
I bet.
it's okay. Yeah, I've gotten less needy in some ways over the years, so yeah.
All right. Well, let's have Leslie ask your question, please.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Leslie.
Hi, Penny.
Hello.
How are you? I was in your class a while back, and
I was gonna say, you look familiar.
so it's great to hear you talk about the stuff that you didn't want to talk about before, and you're still hesitant. And I wrote something in the chat, and I was wondering, is 3-Eye Atlas, is that what's going to help recreate or rejuvenate the earth when it goes through its change, or are the poles going to shift? I heard something about that every 26,000 years and every 12,000 years this happens. I'll let you.
3-Eye Atlas is not going to rejuvenate the earth. The people are going to rejuvenate the earth, and the earth herself is a living being. And in conversations with her, she's made it very clear that there's, how would I call it, that she's expecting us to, to take some action to clean things up a little. But she can do a lot, and if we don't, she will, and that's problematic. The planet has not just the planet, all planets in all solar systems have renewal mechanisms. And the pole shifting is one of those, and the whatever their star is, and our star is our sun. That star also has its own cleaning or renewal mechanisms. And so every so often on some stars, they have they have a micronova and a full-blown sneeze, we'll call it,
Wow.
every 12 years. And they don't have much life on their surface. We live on the surface. And why we get away with that? Because our star only does a micronova every 12,000 years, a severe one. And then there's another one, a smaller one, every 6,000 years. And then there's one that's even less destructive every 3,000 years. And that's the renewal mechanism for our planet. And of course, so many things get ruined. And we don't have any idea of the true history of what is, of our planet and the civilizations that have been here. So we have some cave paintings to go by. That's about it. So yeah, there, in a sense, what you're talking about is trying to connect Three Eye Atlas to that, but the real mechanism, the real message of Three Eye Atlas is it's time to understand your world differently. It's consciousness and plasma, because plasma responds to consciousness immediately, just directly to consciousness. So yeah, so I hope that makes sense.
Great.
One, I was just, when you were talking about plasma and how it creates itself, I was just thinking of how babies are made. They just know what to grow. The sperm and the egg get together and it just becomes a union. It's miraculous.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I talk about that in I think Intuition 2. How do we form? You have to understand how plasma works, and then you understand how babies come to be. So it's really very interesting.
Great. Thank you, Rosalie. April.
Oh, hi. I'm delighted to be able to speak. I'll make the question quick. How important is it for the rest of us to go through a process of Kundalini?
Not the kind I went through.
No, I don't know. Great sex, but yeah, I think it's a lot of things happen after that.
When it happens in the middle of the grocery store.
Yeah. Is that something that we as humans need to aspire to in service to our planet?
It's a natural process that should happen if our society was a little bit different, if our education system was a little bit different, if our leadership was a little bit different. I think we would go through those stages. There are 8, well, there's 7 for sure, stages of development. And once you go through those, you arrive at a place that is a Kundalini. Kundalini means awakening of consciousness. That's all it is. So why not awaken that nice and slow and steady and easy and naturally? So, and yes, you will keep coming back here until you start to use your consciousness in ways that are spiritually mature, is probably the best way to say it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a 1-2 punch.
No. And even though I had the 1-2 punch, it took 17 years altogether to process and integrate all of that new information. I had to go back through all the stages of development.
Yeah.
Infant on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. What a story. Wow. Okay, Renee.
I think she left her post.
Okay, it's a black screen.
Comes to her.
Well, we'll skip along then to Amy.
Okay.
Okay, so my question is, if inorganic life creates organic life, then does organic life in turn create inorganic life? And as a secondary to that,
is a plasma ball that comes out of us from our emotions and our thoughts, is that organic or inorganic?
I don't know about that second part of the question, but I have some speculation. However, inorganic life does appear to, the term is invent organic life. Okay. So we might be relatively new kids on the block. And in fact, the fact of the matter is that this particular civilization here at this time on planet Earth is an experiment. And I've mentioned that once or twice before. Can we evolve ourselves without destroying ourselves to a point of extraordinary unlimited consciousness, which is something that inorganic plasma appears to have much greater access to? So how do we access that capacity within ourselves? When you talk about the plasma ball that comes out of us, it isn't really that a plasma ball comes out of us. It's that our consciousness gathers plasma energies and projects it or propels it in some direction. And that does have an impact. We aren't quite developed enough with our eyes to be able to see that. Most people can't see that. I see some of that. But we are forever, I'm just going to say, messing around with, moving and playing with plasma balls, plasma lines, plasma spheres, plasma, frequencies, all kinds of stuff.
I want to add to this now because I've never thought of it in this way. But the thing that came to me in a series of visions walking across my living room 15 years ago,
that's how it happened.
Yeah, it's like, was the third vision was this figure 8 of flowing water right here. It's called the infinitywave. It's very high frequency of love and compassion. But we use it, you can use it to do a deep dive and make a big evolutionary leap. Or you can use it in everyday life to it's basically what we're talking about. You send the wave out and it changes reality.
Yeah.
Every
single thought, every single word.
Yeah. But it's when we imagine it, like if I imagine it in my heart, one end of it, and then the other end in your heart, and we start to run this wave,
right?
We get in the same field.
Yep.
And now we're in this high frequency of love and compassion. It's higher than we're used to experiencing here.
I know.
And then everything, all the molecules change. Everything starts to shift.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm realizing it came representing itself as water. And water we know is full of intelligence, all the things that water is. But now I'm thinking that was the way I could grasp it. That was the way because it's a flow state. But now I'm thinking, no, it's plasma. Oh my gosh.
Plasma behaves like a liquid.
Oh gosh.
And they
blew my mind.
And the motion of plasma is called in science magneto, because it's responding to all the different charges and fields and thoughts that people are projecting. Magnetohydro, which is the water, dynamics. So magnetohydrodynamics is a field of study in the field of plasma.
Okay. This is really fascinating. I am going to be diving into this. If you
look at or listen to some of the ancient stories from the Sumerians, they talk about the great ocean. They're not talking about the water. No. They're talking about the plasma scoop that we live in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. That is so cool. And it makes so much sense why it works so well.
Yeah.
Instantaneously. Like, boom. And it can be a ball shape, a sphere shape.
It can. Yeah.
Like a boom, it can, I mean, I've experienced it.
It can be a double helix. It can be a ball. It can be a set of nested balls. It can be just a single wave vortex type of thing. A spiraling line moving across the universe. So amazing.
Very cool, Penny. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Let me go to the next person. Nanette.
Hello.
Hi there.
I would like to know, how does this connect with when you talk about the new earth that will be being created or is in the process of being created, and how and advice you might have for some of the young people, like say the ones in their 20s that are here to assist in
Yeah.
developing, creating the new earth. I'm thinking, how do I explain that to my daughter? It's like, what's the bridge? What do they need to know, or maybe just understand? Just like a planting a seed, if you will.
The connection to the new earth is that all of this science and understanding of the nature of reality being plasma, not physical stuff, that is the foundation of the new earth. And you can't get to that new earth if you still believe in all the old science, because it's not enough. It isn't comprehensive enough. So the people who take the time, which really doesn't take that much time, to kind of get their hands around, their mind around plasma science, it's the basis of all the metaphysics. It's the basis of telepathy, healing, energy healing, just everything. So that the more people who understand that science, the more we're going to have, excuse me, the more people we're going to have creating that new earth. Hold on here. So it's us. We're the ones doing it. We're the ones making that new earth. Your daughter, good luck with that. She is, if she's 20, she needs a little more time. 20 to 23 is kind of a turning point for young people.
And
Right.
she's 25.
25. Oh, okay. Maybe. But they have to start asking questions themselves.
Yeah.
So, I think the solution, part of the solution, and I'm getting ready to do this. I have a small course that I put together a long time ago about plasma. Well, I'm expanding that, and I've got a few people working with me. We're going to make a small documentary that says, this is really what this is our world. This is how our world works. I think the young people will get it very quickly. The older people who were dyed in the wool in the old science, they might have to think about it a minute or two. But the young ones will get it. And they are the ones going to build that new world. And they'll do it naturally. And we'll say, that's not fair. After all this time, that's not fair. So, yeah.
We had to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, right.
On that note, please, Penny, tell everybody where you can be reached and where they can.
Oh, yeah, I am at pennykelly.com. That's where I sell my books. And I think we're just now starting with audiobooks. My first audiobook is up.
Great.
Robes is up as an audiobook. And you can see classes and tea and stuff like that. But to buy it'll refer you to my community, which is mycocolife.com. Patreon, you can go, all of my stuff is on Patreon, goes back a long way. And that, I think, to 2020. I guess that's not so long when I think of how long it's been. But lots and lots of old videos are on the Patreon channel. And then they're on YouTube and Rumble and, places like that. And a lot of, what do you call those podcasts? Audio podcasts. So, yeah.
Well, it has been an incredible honor and just a delight to speak with you tonight and to get to know you a little better behind all the, you have so much knowledge. but I like to find out who the person is, you know,
I do
and
too.
how they come along and become who they are.
I have to agree. There've been a couple times when I've thought, well, I think it's really, I would like to start talking to a few people, but I have this like shyness. It's like, are they going to be willing to talk about who they are as a person? Yeah, maybe they're not, but I am. I think, transparency is pretty good.
Yeah.
You can't really have telepathy without transparency.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well said.
Well,
Well, if you liked this interview, and I'm sorry we can't answer all the questions just because of our timing, please like and subscribe and do all that fun stuff. This is a not new. I'm not new to interviewing people. I've been doing it ever since the lockdown happened, and I just wanted to do something. But it is a new podcast. I just did it. I didn't know about podcasts. I just started interviewing people.
I know.
So now we are official, and that means we'll have more play, and this will get out to more people, which is what we want to do. We want to educate people who are interested in evolving.
let me say something. If you have questions that you really want to have answered, you can write that question and send it in an email to info@pennykelly.com. And Mary Jo and I will often get on and answer those questions. We'll do a little, maybe it's only 10-minute or 15-minute video and put that up for everybody because your questions often help teach others.
And there are some good questions in the chat, by the way. So yes, please, I'm going to put it in here, info@pennykelly.com.
Yeah.
That's so generous of you.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. For questions.
Hold on one second. There we go. Ta-da. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So I think, don't be shy. Even if you think, oh, somebody else probably already asked this. No, don't think that. Sometimes you have to hear the same answer 2, 3, 4 times. It's phrased in different ways, and then it sinks in. And then you're like, I got it.
Especially when we're trying to poke out of a set mind, it's been taught forever, and it takes a while to wrap your head around it.
It does. Yes, it does.
Well, you're doing a fabulous job leading us, so thank you. And
Okay,
and-
I don't feel like I'm the great leader or anything like that. It's like I'm just a farmer. But I love people. I do love people. I think people are absolutely fascinating.
they are.
I see the potential in so many people. I don't make it easy for people. If I tell you, what you're doing here, I'm just somebody else telling you what to do. So I make people work for their great wisdom, and by gosh, they make it. They figure it out. They get it. So,
Well, that's when it's earned, and that's when it means
Nice.
something. So,
yeah.
well
Right.
done.
Yeah. So I want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming, everyone. I'll take off the spotlight so we can see everybody.
Yeah.
Remove spotlight. There it is. There we go. Hello, there they are. Beautiful
There we go.
faces. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Look at everybody.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Shiny.
Yeah. I see them hiding behind those black screens.
That's right. That's right, everybody. Much, much love. Until the next time, I have a talk tomorrow night. So come on
Okay.
back, y'all.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.